Welcome to Bavaria, Germany's southernmost state. You might know it for this, Oktoberfest, but the state is also home to a very unusual and little-known geographical feature. Inside Bavaria, you will find this village, Jungholz. At first glance, it looks quite ordinary, just like any other mountain village, but on closer look, you will notice it isn't a German village at all. It is Austrian, even though it's somehow located within Bavaria, Germany. Jungholz is what's called a functional exclave. It's a tiny part of Austria, almost entirely surrounded by Germany. Not a single road leads into the village from Austria. You always have to drive through Germany to get there. There's only one tiny spot where it connects to the rest of Austria, and that's at the top of the Zolkschrofen, a mountain about 1,600 meters high. That's where boundary stone 110 sits, the only point where Jungholz is linked to Austria. This mysterious spot on the map is a prime example of how absurd borders were created back then. The border drawing here in Jungholz dates back to the 14th century, and in this video I'd like to take a look at history. This is the story where there's an Austrian village almost completely surrounded by Germany. Okay, here we are. Welcome to Jungholz, Austria. As you can see, I booked a hotel room right in the middle of this village. I thought that's the best way to explore this little village. And yeah, I already drove through it with a car and it looks pretty sweet, yeah. And the funny thing is, if you drive into the village, you don't really notice that you just drove from one country to another country, because you take the main road in Bavaria, Germany, then you turn left and then you drive up a little hill and then you're basically in Jungholz and in another country. And the only thing that reminds you of that is the typical blue EU sign which says Austria. Yeah, and that's basically it. So I would say let's explore this little village, but before I do that, I take a little nap because I had a very long car ride. So see you in a few seconds. Okay, let's go for a short evening walk through the village. It won't take long because there isn't actually that much to see in Jungholz. Only about 300 people live here. It is incredibly quiet and peaceful. You get a full dose of mountain air. There are a few historic buildings like the church, for example. There is also a herb garden and a ski resort for winter. But the most interesting thing is, of course, the geography. This is what it actually looks like off the map. This little stream is where Germany becomes Austria. There is only one access road for cars to the village, and if you aren't looking closely, you probably won't even notice you've changed countries. There are a few EU signs here, like this one. Then the posts at the side of the road also changed. They have a different design in Austria. And if you drive a little further, you're greeted by this wooden sign, Jungholz, Tyrol, no longer Allgäu, Bavaria, Germany. And yet, even here in Jungholz, Austria, you will still find German elements. For example, these signs from the Bavarian Mountain Rescue, who are responsible for this area. Even though we are not in Bavaria, Germany anymore, it is one of many little quirks we will learn about later. The only problem with this village, it was built on a mountain. So to get back to my hotel, I have to walk all the way up there again. Okay, that was my little evening walk through Jungholz. Beautiful, isn't it? Well, but now a new day has come, and now I would say let's talk about facts. Let's take a deep dive into history and let's answer the question, why the heck is Jungholz in Austria and not in Germany? And why is it almost completely surrounded by Germany? Well, to find out, we have to go back to the 14th century. Specifically to the year 1342. That is the starting point for this geographical curiosity. Back then, the land where Jungholz sits today belongs to a man from Wertach, that is the neighboring community in what is now Bavaria, Germany. He sells the area to a man from the Tannheim Trade Cooperative, which is now in Tyrol, Austria. That man also pays his taxes there. At first, this does not change the status of the land, but later this exact fact leads to the border curiosity we see today. Over time, the Tyroleans expand their influence in the region, partly by buying parts of the Tannheim Valley from Bavarian landowners. Around 1450, Jungholz is then officially assigned to the Tyrolean administration. The private sales contract from years before is one of the deciding factors. In the centuries that follow, the Germans, first through the Prince-Bishopric of Augsburg and later the Kingdom of Bavaria, tried to get Jungholz back several times. During the Napoleonic Wars, they even succeed for a few years, from 1805 to 1815. After that, the village is in a bit of a legal limbo. The full affiliation of Jungholz with Austria is finally settled in a border treaty from 1844 and a state treaty from 1850-1851. In these agreements, Bavaria finally renounces all claims. In the following years, everyone looks for a practical solution for the region. Even back then, customs duties are a huge issue, and since only one road leads from Bavaria to Jungholz, Bavaria and Austria agree in 1868 to include the Exclave in the Bavarian customs zone. This links it economically to Germany. There is only one more period in which Jungholz loses its status as Austrian territory through the German annexation during the Second World War between 1938 and 1945. But after its end, Jungholz returns to Austria and belongs to the country to this day. But if you think now the story is over, well, not quite, because the fact that there is a small Austrian village almost completely surrounded by Germany actually brings some curiosities with it. When it joined the German customs zone, Jungholz also became part of the German currency union, which means for a long time the German mark was the currency used at the checkouts in Jungholz, Austria. This special status had another effect. Jungholz became a tax haven. German VAT rates applied to goods and services in the village, which were often lower than Austrian rates. However, for banking, the much stricter Austrian banking secrecy laws applied instead of the German ones. In the 1980s and 90s, banks used Jungholz to offer accounts that took average of this light regulation. Interest rates were higher, transactions were more discreet, and Germans could easily move their money abroad through Jungholz without any checks or hurdles. So, if someone wanted to hide their cash flow or transfer dirty money to foreign accounts, Jungholz was actually the perfect place for that for a long time. This led to Jungholz having the highest concentration of banks in all of Austria relative to its population. Despite only having a few hundred residents, there were 3 different banks here at one point. All that changed, however, in the year 1995, when Austria joined the European Union. Since that day, Austria is part of the European internal market, and also most of the tax privileges here in Jungholz were eliminated. Austrian tax laws were gradually introduced and banking secrecy was relaxed. And when the euro arrived in 2002, also the German mark area ended here. But one little tax quirk remains. Today, Jungholz is still considered a German customs connection area, so it still uses German VAT rates. But even in everyday life, you can still see how Austria and Germany both play some kind of a role in this village of Jungholz. Because, for example, this municipality has an Austrian but also a German postal code. There were actually plans to scrap the German postcode in 2006, but the residents fought to keep it. The German dialing code, however, has been removed. Previously, both numbers worked side by side. Today, the community remains closely tied to Germany. The village has a primary school, but it follows the German curriculum. There is no secondary school at all, so many residents use Bavarian schools instead. People in Jungholz also commute to Germany an unusual amount, for example to buy groceries, because running a supermarket in the village isn't profitable. Also, almost no one who works outside the village works in Austrian Tyrol. Most people from Jungholz head to Bavaria for work. Even looking at the residents themselves, you see this mix of cultures. Less than half of the population is actually Austrian. About 60% are EU foreigners, mostly Germans. This gives Jungholz the highest percentage of non-Austrian citizens in the whole of Austria. This is also interesting because while these residents can vote, they cannot run for mayor, as their right to stand for election is restricted. Today, the biggest industry in Jungholz is tourism. Most of the guests staying in the 700 beds are also German, and the small village relies heavily on them. Since the old tax privileges disappeared, Jungholz has been going through a period of structural change, and it will be interesting to see how it develops in the coming decades. This place that has been caught between two countries for centuries. Okay, that's it. That was my trip to Jungholz, Austria, a village completely surrounded by Germany. Almost completely. I hope you liked it. I hope you learned something. If you did, then please leave a thumbs up. You can also hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you won't miss any upcoming video. And if you'd like to support me and my work, you can also do that, for example, on Patreon, or you can become a channel member here on my YouTube channel. Then you will get exclusive stuff and new videos before everyone else, so you should check that out. Special thanks today to my colleague Noah Matzat, because he did the research and wrote the text of this video, so thank you very much for that. That's it for today. Have a safe journey. See you next time.